Welcome back to Talk a Good Game, a show all about, you guessed it, good games. I'm your host, Andrew Wolf. With me today, independent video game researcher and historian. You may know him from his work featured on Did You Know Gaming and Unseen 64, Liam Robertson. Thank you so much for joining me. How the heck are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's been an exciting week. Lots of stuff going on with Nintendo. Hopefully by the time this is published, we'll know more about the Switch too. But I'm glad you're doing well. What have you been working on lately? Anything exciting?
I'm not sure how much I can say, but I do videos for Did You Know Gaming, as you mentioned, kind of documentary stuff. And I'll just say I'm research. This is kind of not specific, but I'm working on some sort of video to do with a cancelled Microsoft game.
Ooh,
Uh,
very
but
interesting.
it's probably one nobody listening can remember or has heard of. It's not one of the big ones, you know what I mean?
Yeah, not
It's just
Halo.
something that personally interests me.
Those are my favorite, though, right? I'm a big fan of really diving into something that you care personally about, and I think that shows. And a lot of the work that I've seen or I've heard you do, I think it shows when when you care.
I would hope so. Yeah, I think I generally tend to stick to things that I'm passionate about. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of boring for me, and I don't think my interest in the topic is going to come through if I'm just phoning it in. You know.
Right. I'm looking forward to checking that out. Do you want to dive right into talking about good games?
Yeah, I can talk about some good games.
Maybe games that people have heard about or remembered. I've got your list here. Your favorite game of all time, Elite Beat Agents. Now, I've never I've never played Elite Beat Agents, but I have seen you post about it a lot. You want to start with telling me a little bit about it? I know I think it's a rhythm game. I want to say I know that, but I think it's a rhythm game.
Yeah, it's a rhythm game. Yeah. You asked me to pick my favorite game of all time, and I'm honestly not sure if I have a definitive favorite, but this is up there. You know, this is top three, top five, whatever. I don't know if I could give you like the answer, but this is what came to mind when you asked me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm going with. And you're right, it's like a story-driven rhythm beat game for the Nintendo DS, the original one, where you tap along it on the touchscreen in time with the music, and each song takes you through a different story with a different character, and each one is in some kind of perilous situation. They cry out for help, and the Elite B agents show up and help them by cheering them on by dancing to pop music, and it's very fun and silly, but it's a great game. I know that might sound like an unusual pick, but it's genuinely brilliant. And I could talk about it all day, but yeah, I don't know if there's a specific area you want me to take this into. I can tell you about the history of it, whatever you want me to do. You let me know.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is a game? So it's with the touchscreen. Do you feel like this is a game that would translate well to like Switch or Switch 2 or whatever? Like, is this something that works on a controller, or is this you really need like the touchpad?
It wouldn't work with a controller, I don't think. I mean, it's a bit complicated, but the game that Elite Beat Agents is based on, which is called Os Tatakaya Wendon, it's kind of like a westernization of that, which is a game made by the same developer in this. They made a Wendon, and then Nintendo asked them, "Hey, can you make one for the West?" Because it was about a Wendon, which are Japanese male cheerleaders, and we don't know what that is over here. So they're like, "Okay, why don't you make a version of this that the West will like?" Since a lot of people were importing it, right? It was very popular with importers back in the day because you may remember the DS was region free,
Mm-hmm.
which the 3DS wasn't. Anyway, lots of people importing it, and that's kind of why Elite Beat Agents was made. And that game, the original game, Os Tatakaya went on to inspire a PC game that's now very popular called Os, or I think most people call it Osu. It's just the one word OSU. It's a very popular free PC game that people just plug in any kind of song for it, and a lot of people play that with a mouse. So I guess in a way you could probably put it on PC. Some people would argue. I still argue the optimal way to play this game, as it was originally designed, these mechanics were on a touchscreen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, assuming the Switch 2 or the Switch, well, we know the Switch 1 obviously has a touchscreen. it could work, but I do think that there's something to be said for the kind of tactile precision of the DS's touchscreen, which was not. I'm trying to remember what kind of touchscreen the DS had, but it wasn't like capacitive like the Switch, right? It was like a different type of touchscreen, and so you can get styluses for the Switch. I have one, and I remember using it for like Super Mario Maker 2, but I don't know if it would really translate for most people. I think it's a game that was designed for the DS, the original one, the original DS in mind, and they nearly did something like it on the 3DS. They had pitches for something for an Awendon game on the 3DS I'm aware of, but it never happened. And I think had it been on the 3DS, maybe we could have seen it continue, but it's really something that was designed with the DS in mind. It was when the original DS was first coming out was when it was conceived of, right? Right when Nintendo first showed that off at E3 2004 was when the developers saw that and they were like, we want to make something for this with the stylus in mind when they were showing off WarioWare in those games. You remember that?
Yeah. It does kind of remind me. It feels like it would be a mini game or a micro game in WarioWare. But it's interesting because I think I'm probably more familiar with Osu or Os or Osu, however you say it. I think I saw a video not too long ago about like this guy that's, I don't know, top 10 in the world or something, and he pretended like he wasn't very good, and he hired someone to teach him how to be better at the game, and it was just like a kind of a funny video, undercover type video. And I think maybe my other experience with this type of game is when I've gone to Japan. I love going to the arcades, and the people that like they wear gloves and they play those arcade games, kind of like I think this game, but they use their hands to like do all the beats and everything. And I don't know what that game is called, but it's one of my favorite to, when I'm in Japan at the arcades, one of my favorite to watch. But I love the art and the characters for Elite Beat Agents. I love that they have like giant afro. I don't know what this other guy with the crazy updo, but they've all got like glasses on and suits. And so like why is it your favorite game or like one of your top favorite games? I know it's hard to force you to choose a favorite, but why is Elite Beat Agents in particular? Like, what do you love so much about it?
I think the rhythm beat mechanics, it's really something that has to be experienced to understand how satisfying it is. It's very easy to pick up and it's super fun, but it can get surprisingly difficult as Osu or Os can, right? I mean, these are the same mechanics, and the popularity of Osu, I'm just going to call it that because I think most people know it as that, even though it's not really how you should pronounce it. Whatever. I think the popularity of that is a testament to how good these mechanics were, because they basically took what Innis mastered in Awendon and Elite Beat Agents, and they made it much more available to a wider market. And that one wasn't Innis's fault that they didn't do that. They wanted to continue doing these games, but Nintendo didn't want to. They made 3 of them. They made 2 Awendon and 1 Elite Beat Agents, and they wanted to do a sequel, but they didn't get to. But anyway, yeah, just the mechanics of it are very fun to pick up, but it does get difficult. There's a quite high skill ceiling for this game. And apart from that, it's just aggressively charming. It's got this really fun, quirky sense of humor. And it also tugs at the heartstrings on occasion. I think this is what sets it apart from stuff like Osu to me is each level is story driven. There's a very famous level in that game about a young girl whose dad has passed away, and she's remembering the past times with him, his birthday, him preparing for Christmas with her, and she's visited by his spirits around Christmas time. He comes back to say goodbye after having, I think the implication is he's died in some kind of accident quite abruptly or something like that. And it's very emotional, surprisingly so. And I think a lot of people have memories of crying at that. And I totally get it. Like each game, each Awendon game and Elite Beat Agents has some kind of tearjerker stage like that. And yeah, I think this is what sets this game apart from other rhythm beat games and Osu is, yeah, on the surface, EBA has this energetic, silly energy to it. It's very quirky, but it also has a ton of heart to it as well. And I think that's what sets it apart is that stuff.
I love when a game like that you, I don't know, I wouldn't expect it to have, a story, or, just looking at the box art, I wouldn't expect it to pull on the heartstrings. But I love when a game does that, when it's capable of doing that. And I think it says a lot about, the developers and the people that made the game, when they're able to take a rhythm game like this and put that much heart into it. So it looks like it was Leona Interactive released it. It's almost been 20 years. 2006 it released on DS.
Yeah, so this was developed by Innis and published by Nintendo. So it's a Nintendo property. It's like co-owned by them. And yeah, it came out 2006, I think, in America, maybe 2007 in Europe. And yeah, the Yowendon games, those only came out in Japan, as I said before. This came out in the West. This was our version of it, I guess. And yeah, it's interesting. The guy who created it, Kiichi Yano, who also created Wendon, he grew up in the US, and so I think it is kind of a culmination of his experiences as a second generation Japanese immigrant who grew up in I think San Francisco or Los Angeles. I can't remember off the top of my head, but in America. And so he was exposed to a lot of Western culture there, obviously American pop music, Hollywood movies, and it's kind of like an amalgamation of all these influences. It's very inspired by stuff like Men in Black and Ghostbusters. They're secret agents who go around and help people with music and dancing. And I think one of the characters you talked about before, the guy with the big I don't know what you'd call it, the big hair.
Yeah.
The main character, the big kind of blonde hair, I can't really remember. That character is just called Agent J, which is literally the same name, I think, of Will Smith's character in Men in Black, if I remember right. So it's very much wearing its influence on this on its sleeve, and they all have the Elite agents all carry the iconography of the star, and that's a big thing in Blues Brothers as well, which is another influence. They drive a car which has the star on it, as I remember correctly, if I remember correctly. And so yeah, it's just this melting pot of all these different influences from East and West, but mostly West. And yeah, again, it just has such heart to it, and it's super inspired, and yeah, just apart from anything, it's just a ton of fun to play. But then when you put that stuff on top of it, the fact that it actually can carry a story through it, and it has so many memorable little story beats throughout it, especially the ending, the last sort of showdown where there's kind of like a boss. It's a bit difficult to explain, but there's just a really hard song that it ends on, where it brings all the past characters together that you've seen throughout the game. The finale to it is just excellent.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, Ines. It looks like they changed their name to Leona Interactive in 2020. But I was trying to look up like what else they've worked on, or what they're working on now. But it honestly doesn't, unless you like the Lips series, which I've never heard of. It looks like it's like a singing game, a bunch on the Xbox 360. But it doesn't look like they are doing much related to Elite Beat Agents. And
Well. Here's the thing. I mean, it doesn't really exist in the same way that it did back then. Like, I don't know if it's right to say. I'm sure, like, Wikipedia will say it's called Leona Interactive or whatever now. But basically, what happened was Innis existed, and they made a bunch of games. The Lips was essentially a series that they developed with Microsoft. It was a karaoke game for the Xbox 360, which Microsoft published. So it was like a first party karaoke game that was quite successful. And over time, they couldn't get Nintendo to sign off on more games. So that series fell apart, and the generation of the Xbox 360 moved on, and they stopped doing the Lips games. And Innis basically ceased to exist for the most part. And then a new company called Innis J was founded, and essentially it just did sort of outsourcing work. It did sort of support work for different companies, basically different Japanese developers for the most part, and it worked on some mobile games. And Innis J was renamed to Leona Interactive. So Innis, the company that made Lips, and it went on, and Gitaru Man on the PS2, that really no longer exists. It basically fell apart because they couldn't get, I think, the contracts to do these risky, stylish rhythm beat games anymore, because they were initially quite successful, but I think by the time Went On 2 came out, that wasn't mega successful. It just did like decent,
Hmm.
And as a developer told me in the video that I did on EBA a number of years ago, doing okay in game development in terms of sales sometimes just isn't enough. You need to keep doing really well. Otherwise, the
Hmm.
publisher's going to get spooked, and they'll think, well, maybe next time it won't make money, which is a
Hmm.
reasonable concern, I suppose. But yeah, Innis basically no longer exists. But Kiichi Anno, who founded Innis, I think he does run that Leon Interactive game, and I think they work on stuff like mobile games, if I remember correctly, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Looks like a handful of iOS, Android games. Well, the good news is, and I love this about some DS games. I mean, like if you're trying to build your DS collection right now, the prices are pretty sky high. But the good news is, it looks like you can pick up EBA for like $20 complete in box. I'm just checking out
Mm.
the like price starting price, which $20 US if you want the US one. It looks like the PAL one is even cheaper. It's like 13 US dollars, which if you want to pick up Liam Robertson's favorite game of all time, or one of favorite games of all time, $20 is like, that's pretty cheap for a DS game. I feel like a
Eh,
quality DS game.
Yeah, and also if you can find a way to get like an R4 card, you could just pirate it, or you could.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you want to endorse, but also you could mod a Wii U. The Wii
Really?
U is capable of modding of running DS games,
Oh,
because it
that's
had a
right.
DS. It had like DS Virtual Console, and that game didn't release on there officially, but it's very easy to just add it in there, and
Yeah.
I think it would play fine on that. I think
Yeah. I guess
on
with
the Wii
the
U.
gamepad, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, you just have a bigger screen for it. So
Yeah.
I've not tried that. I should do that. I bet that's really fun.
Yeah. I bet that works really well. I had a hard time playing uh, Super Mario Maker 2 on Switch because I loved Mario Maker 1 on the Wii U gamepad and being able to use the stylus and like build it there. And it just
Mhm.
wasn't the same on the Switch. And I do miss the like Nintendo having a really good touchpad. I miss that.
Yeah, I mean, I think technology just moved towards capacitive touch pads, didn't it? So it
Yeah.
makes sense. But you can't actually buy a stylus that will work on that screen. I
Hmm.
did. So, if you really need that, you can get it.
There was like a coloring book game that came out like I don't know a couple years ago, and it had a stylus like that came with the physical version. If you bought the physical version, came with like a
Oh, really?
big stylus, which I think is pretty cool. But I know you can also just buy them. I think Nintendo, did they officially release like an official stylus when Game Builder Garage came out? I can't really remember, but I feel like there was something. Maybe it was just in Japan, but
If they have, I've not seen that personally, but that would
yeah.
be interesting if that's true.
Yeah. Funny fact before we move on to the next game, it looks like I'm just reading the Wikipedia article and it's saying that people were noticing that when Nintendo purchased an animated film studio and called it Nintendo Pictures, we're saying that that shares the name of a fictional company that appeared in the game's second stage as the production company, which is pretty
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. Yeah, it's just like a very small background joke, because there's a stage about a film director, and I guess the studio that he's making the film for was called that in the game, just in a very brief flash, a little background joke. It was
Yeah.
called Nintendo Pictures. So yeah,
They
that's
predicted it
interesting.
20 years ago. But of course, that's what Nintendo's going to name it. Yeah, so I feel like I'm convinced to check out Elite Beat Agents, especially because I have a 3DS that has like a capture card. Even though you don't really need a capture card for a 3DS anymore with all the emulation, but I'm tempted to pick up Elite Beat Agents, especially since it's $20, and maybe I'll stream it from the capture card.
It's so worth it.
Yeah, you've sold me on it. I'm sold. So we've got a number of questions to get through. The next one, this game is a lot different than Elite Beat Agents. A game you love right now that you feel is underrated. And your answer is Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. I can't remember which Monster Boy game I've played on Switch. Is this the one that came out like shortly after Switch released?
Yeah, you're right. So you might be getting a little bit confused by the name, understandably so, because there's only one Monster Boy game, but there are many Wonder Boy games. And
Ah, that's what it is.
yeah, so the deal with that is originally this was going to be a Wonder Boy game, which was this series, a side scroller series that started on arcades. It was on the Sega Master System with games like Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, which is an excellent game. Good
That's the one I
remake of that
played.
on the Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one
Yeah.
released launch. That was like launch window. It was like April 2017.
Yeah, that's a good game. But this is like a spiritual successor, and it brought on board the creator of Wonder Boy. And it itself was originally going to be a part of the series. But as I understand it, there was some sort of falling out with the name because I think they wanted to use some more kind of adult themes in it to do with alcohol or something. And essentially, what ended up happening is they came to an agreement with Sega not to call it Wonder Boy, but it would basically be a spiritual successor that would use certain things from it. Like it would basically be Wonder Boy. It would have references to Wonder Boy, but it is its own thing. And at the same time, it also has some of the music from Wonder Boy in it that's referenced in it. Yeah, it's a bit confusing. It basically is Wonder Boy in all but name.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's the best Wonder Boy game or Monster Boy game, whatever you want to say. I, saw you asked me what is like an underrated game, and this is immediately what comes to mind whenever someone asks me that. This originally came out in 2018. So I think the Dragon's Trap remake came out in 2017, as you said.
Yeah.
And then this came out 1 year later, and it is a completely brand new game. And I think it's genuinely one of my favorite Metroidvania games ever. And I'm a big fan of games like that. So this is high up there in the pantheon of those for me. But nobody seems to have played it.
Yeah.
Have you played?
I think you're right. I think I was getting it confused. I think I did play. I didn't play Asha in Monster World, but I did play Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap, and I think I played it because I don't know if you remember, but like early Switch, like Switch launch window, or even like 2017 in general, there wasn't a lot. Like it's not like it is now, where the eShop is just filled with AI garbage and publishers and developers like re-releasing their games but calling it like the Plus Edition or like Complete Edition, and then just keep re-releasing the same thing. It wasn't like that back in 2017. It was like there wasn't a lot of games available, but I think Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap was the one that was available, and I did play that, and that was it was published by Emu. And Monster Boy published by FDG. And it's funny that they were like, well, we'll just change the name a little bit to Monster Boy because FDG also published Oceanhorn, which is like basically Zelda, spiritual Zelda. But no, I have not played Monster Boy. My problem, first of all, I love the aesthetics. It reminds me a lot of Rayman.
Okay.
I don't remember which Rayman am I thinking of. Rayman Legends,
maybe like the
probably.
first one of the very early ones, maybe.
Yeah, I think when I played Rayman Legends on Wii U, it was one of my favorite Wii U games because I loved the gamepad. I don't know, we keep coming back to the gamepad, but I loved the gamepad on the Wii U for Rayman Legends, and I actually didn't really like it on Switch because it just wasn't the same. You couldn't like tap as you were running, but so it gives me like at least the aesthetics gives me like Rayman vibes. I love how colorful the world is, and like the characters just and the enemies just like pop from the background. My concern, though, I have a really hard time playing Metroidvania games. Part of it is the difficulty, and I wonder like how hard is this game? Does it play like it's like an old school Metroidvania?
It's pretty hard.
Yeah, see I'm like not. I love video games, but I'm not good at video games. So that's that's like my major problem with Metroidvanias.
I mean, if you can handle like a decently hard like Metroid game or something, you'd probably be fine. But
Hmm.
there is some quite like old school platforming sections in it, from what I remember, that are pretty damn difficult. But I like that. I think if you've, I don't know how far you got in Dragon's Trap, but it feels very much in tune with the ethos under which that game was made. It feels like to me, and yeah, I mean, I just think it's so fun to play and so well designed, like the Wonder Boy games. Essentially, you are a boy who can shapeshift into different creatures, like a snake and a lion or a dragon, and all those have different abilities. For instance, the snake can fit into small gaps and vents like the Morph Ball from Metroid, or the lion can do like a Wario Land style shoulder charge to smash obstacles. And so as you're going through the game and exploring this world, you are unlocking more of these forms, and that allows you to access previously inaccessible areas, as you would expect in like a search action style game, right?
Yeah.
But I think the mechanics of it, the platforming, the combat feels really precise to control. It does play a lot like Dragon's Trap to some degree, and I just think the map, the dungeons are impeccably well designed. As you said, the art style is beautiful. It's all hand drawn art, and I have to say, it looks amazing on the OLED Switch. For my money, like this is one of the best looking games to play on there. The colors pop so much on that screen.
I buy
It,
that.
it, it is it is. I don't know if you have one of those, but playing games with that type of art style, hand drawn 2D art on there,
Hmm.
especially this game, which has kind of like outlines, it looks so good.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing that like Switch 2 rumored, and this recording is probably shortly before the Switch 2 reveal. But
Uh-huh.
my major gripe with that is going back to non OLED screen, so like an LCD
Uh-huh.
screen, like huge bummer for me because I play a lot of handheld, like in bed or like when my fiance is watching TV or whatever. I
Mm.
love playing handheld on my OLED, and it's gonna be tough going away from the OLED at least until next year when they release, or 2 years from now when I buy another Switch
Mm.
2 as the OLED version. Yeah, I'm just looking on the DekuDeals.com page. I'm looking at the price history too. It looks like it goes on sale every month for 75% off. So it's usually $40, but it looks like every month the price history shows like $10 it goes on sale. And for $10, it seems like a solid deal for a
Oh
20-ish hour
yeah.
game.
Yeah, it's a pretty meaty game. You get this is longer than most Metroid games. I think
Hmm.
it's pretty big, and it's just full of good stuff. Really good bosses, really good dungeons. The music, I will mention that, absolutely bangs. And I feel like if more people knew about the music, it might sell them on it, because the soundtrack was worked on by a bunch of seasoned Japanese composers, people like Yuzo Koshiro, who worked on Streets of Rage, who did the Streets of Rage music, um, Michiru Yamane, who did the soundtrack for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So, you've got some real pedigree there. And I remember playing this thinking, wow, this soundtrack, it's going pretty hard. And then you look up who did the music, and it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I'm sensing a
So,
trend here with music and your taste, Liam.
oh, maybe. I think it might be a bit of a coincidence, but it has to be said, this game especially has an absolute banger of a soundtrack. It's in my opinion, it's like an all time great video game soundtrack, but few are familiar with it.
Yeah,
And so when someone says what's an underrated game, I'm like, go for it.
this is it.
And I really just don't know anyone who I've recommended this to, who've played it, who doesn't like it.
Hmm.
I try to get people to play it, and everyone I've spoken to who takes my advice on that are like, "Wow, this is good. You were right." But I don't know why it just didn't take off. Unfortunately,
I wish it had a
in the
demo.
way it should have.
I want to try it out, but I'm a little hesitant. I wish it had a demo. Looks like it does have a demo on Steam, so I
Okay,
could, I could check it out
okay.
on Steam. Yeah, I'm loving the art style.
Oh yeah,
It looks great.
the art style is great. Yeah, I love games like that with hand drawn art. I don't know if you remember Wario Land, the Shake It or Shake Dimension
Hmm.
on the Wii. That's a good one. That was I think that was the last Wario Land game came out, one of them, and that was all hand drawn art, and I thought that looked great, but
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know,
I'm down to check it
I
out.
don't think it's that popular.
Yeah. My only problem is I am a big physical collector. I love having my Switch games, especially my Switch games, physical, because I'm not worried about any disc rot or anything. It looks like they did release a physical version on Switch
Hmm.
and PS4. It doesn't look like it's still being sold yet, or it's still being sold. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think this is quite a niche game, and if you look it up, you can actually get you will find it on eBay for maybe like £40, which
Hmm.
is that's like the going rate for it when it first came
Yeah.
out. So I mean, it depends what you want to spend. I think it's absolutely worth that. It's absolutely worth full price, in my opinion. I know that sounds a bit crazy because it is on sale a lot, and yeah, obviously get it in the sale if you don't care about getting a physical copy.
Yeah.
But to me, if I'd spent that and I played this, I would have been like, oh, worth every
Hmm.
penny.
No, that's yeah. I think I'll try the demo on Steam. I'll start there, and then maybe drop the 40 pounds on a physical version. We'll see. Um,
Hmm.
the next question, and I'm gonna take a wild guess here. So another game you love right now that feels like it was made just for you. Now, Liam, is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Do you feel like it's made just for you because you can punch Nazis?
Well, I mean, that's definitely a factor, isn't it?
That was
That's
my first thought. I was like, punching Nazis. That's your answer for this one. I love it. I haven't played it yet, so I'm a Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, Double, Triple Ultimate successful. I don't whatever they call it now. I'm subscribed to a site, and
hmm.
I think I can play it for free there. But why do you feel like this is made just for you?
Well, I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones. I love the original trilogy. The other two, not so much, but
I don't think I've even seen the newer ones, like the Crystal Skull. I don't think I've seen that. I don't think I've seen any of the new ones.
good, good. Don't ruin the series for you.
Good.
Just keep it that way. That's fine. You don't need to. Nobody needs to. Just the original trilogy. But yeah, for me, this is the best piece of Indiana Jones anything since The Last Crusade. It absolutely nails the vibe and the aesthetic of Indy. And not only does it look like the films and it sounds like the films, it's got the soundtrack, the iconic, scores you would expect. But the way that the character is written and performed in the game as well is just really faithful. The sound alike they
Hmm.
got, I think it's Troy Baker, who's playing young Harrison Ford with Harrison Ford's.
Wow, Troy Baker did.
I think that's him. Yeah.
Wow,
It
that's impressive.
so they got Harrison Ford's likeness, and it's him, playing him with Harrison Ford's likeness. And honestly, it sounds and looks pretty spot on to me. The game's got some real good facial animations. The writing's good. It's funny, and yeah, all of it, the presentation especially, feels surprisingly authentic. And after a little while, I just didn't really think about, oh, that's not actually Harrison Ford. I just think, oh, that's Indy when I'm playing it, right?
Hmm.
And I think,
And that's the way it should be.
yeah, I think there was a real risk of that going wrong. Like, I don't know if you remember, like the Avengers game that came out, and a lot of people were sort of, it felt jarring how you had characters that looked vaguely like Scarlett Johansson and Robert Downey Jr., but they weren't, right? They were kind of like, I
Hmm.
think some people said they're kind of like porn parody actor versions of those characters, and yeah, there's something weird about that. But this feels authentic. It feels spot on, and not only do they get the presentation right, but obviously the gameplay itself is really good as well. And I like how there's an emphasis on approaching each situation you're in smartly. You're incentivized not to go in guns blazing. You're meant to be smart about things, to approach enemies carefully. You don't want to get into massive gunfights because Indiana Jones just in the films generally doesn't go in all guns blazing, right? Like he knows he's not invincible. You remember in the films he takes punches, he gets hit, he gets shot,
Hmm.
and
And he doesn't shoot a whole lot. I don't feel like he shoots a ton.
no, it's like a last resort for him. He's not really
Hmm.
a guy who uses a lot of lethal force unless it's absolutely necessary. And yeah, I think that's true to the character, and that's something that they clearly thought about when they were designing the game. And I like that. I like that it encourages you to use your environment to pick up things like glass bottles or snow globes or whatever you can find, brooms or shovels, and bash bash Nazis over the head with them. And obviously there's fun to that as well. But I just like how there's that little bit of kind of social engineering that I'd expect from games like this, from games like Deathloop and Dishonored. It's like it has a little bit of that flavor to it that I like, and the gameplay is also just very varied as well. I think like sometimes you're doing stealth, you're wearing disguises, you're infiltrating enemy camps to steal things, or you're solving puzzles in some ancient ruins, or you're using your whip to scale the sides of buildings. So there's lots of different facets to it. And then you have the action set pieces as well. There's just so many different areas, little facets of indie that it represents, but all of it, it juggles and it manages to deliver on really well. The execution is there. And I'm surprised how all around it is polished and well made. And they just get the feel and the vibe of indie just so perfectly right, in my opinion. And no matter what I was doing, I felt compelled playing it.
Yeah, I feel like that was the general vibe I got from the reception when it came out in early December 2024. Was mostly like people were maybe hesitant seeing like the trailers and leading up to the release, and then it released, and a lot of what I heard from people was like, I'm I'm surprised by how good this
Uh
is.
huh.
Like it's a movie tie-in, which is already like a little shaky. But they're like, I'm surprised by how much I love this question mark. And I saw a lot of that. And it doesn't. I don't think it surprises me a whole lot that it's a good game, like at the most basic level. I think Machine Games is the developer, right?
Yep.
They did a lot. They did Wolfenstein 2 and a lot of the Wolfenstein stuff, which I think people love for what it is. And honestly, it feels like Machine Games feels like an obvious pick for this. Feels like a solid pick for picking up an Indiana Jones game.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were uncertain. They thought, oh, is it just going to be Wolfenstein with an indie skin? But it really isn't. Like there's a lot to this. There's a lot of wide open areas with exploration and optional objectives, and it just doesn't really have the format of Wolfenstein. It's not a linear game. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's
It's not linear.
well,
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I guess the mainline story is linear, but there's a lot of optional things you can go off and do. It's like kind of wide linear, you know?
Hmm. So it's more, or it's less linear than like Uncharted. Is that
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
Uncharted feels like it's basically on rails.
I would compare it to something like the modern God of War games. That's kind of what it feels like to me. Where
Oh, okay.
there are different areas you can go to and explore, and there's lots of other things to do. But there's a main story you can follow throughout these different environments, right? And yeah,
Hmm.
that's kind of what it feels like to me. So
Yeah, not a bad game series to be compared to, right?
yeah,
The modern God of War is like solid games.
yeah, definitely. That's kind of the format I would describe it as. And yeah, that's not Wolfenstein, is it? That is very much its own thing. And if anyone's
Hmm.
thinking it's just going to be that with indie on it, it's not. It feels like an Indiana Jones game built from the ground up. And
Yeah.
I don't really think about Wolfenstein when I'm playing it. It is very much its own thing. It has quite a big focus on first person combat. I think that was another thing people were uncertain about. Like they wanted third person, they wanted Uncharted, right? They wanted that type of a game. And
Yeah.
sometimes the camera pulls back into third person when you're doing platforming and that type of thing, right? So you get a little bit of that where you see the character doing that. So, but I just don't think that that's a problem. I think when you're playing it, you're just absorbed in the world and the story, and you're enjoying the character and his quips and all that stuff, right? And I think, the first person makes it feel unique. It allows it to stand apart from games like Tomb Raider or Uncharted. And I think they made the right call, honestly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that. I think with like combining it with a solid voice actor and it actually looking like indie and playing first person, I think that probably makes you feel like you're actually playing as Indiana Jones instead of playing a game that features Indiana Jones. I
Yeah.
hadn't really considered that before.
Yeah, I definitely think that, let's say they had done just third person Indiana Jones, immediately the thing everyone's going to compare it to is going to be Uncharted, right? Every review is going to be like, is this just Uncharted? You just know that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the case. But
Yeah.
yeah, by stepping out of the shadow of that and, blazing their own trail, doing their own thing, they've made something that feels completely fresh and different from anything else that's out there, in my opinion.
Do you feel like Bethesda is going to give them the green light to work on, I don't know, Great Circle 2 or whatever, the subtitle is going to be for another Indiana Jones game?
I think, well, it'll be down to Microsoft nowadays, won't it? And
Oh, yeah.
I think that, yeah, they'll probably get the go ahead to do that. I think this has been pretty damn successful for them. It got me to subscribe to Game Pass, which I almost never do, and I know a bunch of people did the same. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to be said for how Game Pass affects sales, but
For
I
sure.
get the impression that Microsoft will be happy. This is the result they wanted. It's done well, and
Yeah.
a lot of people are playing it, and it's going to be on PS5 and you know PC, right? If it's not already on PC, I can't remember, but I know it's on Xbox. But yeah, again, it's going to be on the PS5, like in 2025, if I remember right, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think coming to PS5 and next year. Yeah, it is if it is available on Steam, and of course, I think it's also available on like the Xbox
yeah,
store or whatever. I do wonder if they're gonna because they did bring Wolfenstein 2 to Switch, which still blows my mind. The games that have been ported to Switch, but I do
mm,
wonder if it'll also come to Switch too. But yeah, I think your point about like Game Pass impacting video game sales, I think there's definitely like a bigger story there, right? And I think that a lot of developers that have had their games featured on Game Pass, it's like Xbox players feel like they're not going. It feels like they're not going to buy games because games come to Game Pass, and I think that impacts sales on Xbox as a console. But I think for like first party stuff like this, where like Xbox or Microsoft owns Bethesda now, and I think that probably matters less to them, especially if people are signing up for Game Pass.
yeah. I mean, Microsoft's doing their own thing. It's not a problem for them, but I do think that it's just it's not me making a judgment. I think some people think that when I point this out, I'm making a judgment, and I'm really not. Like, I get Game Pass sometimes. I know many people who do, and if you don't want to own your games, that's okay, right? But I just think
Mm-hmm.
it is an interesting phenomenon to point out that it has demonstrably decreased actual sales, people buying these games, because they
Mm-hmm.
know that if they can, get Game Pass, or maybe they already just have it, they pay for it already, they can play these games without, paying that full price, which is a lot for some people. A lot of people
Yeah.
will go with, £16 or whatever it is now, a month over buying a full price game. I mean, yeah, Indiana Jones, to buy the game, just a boxed version, it's quite expensive. I think it's like
Yeah. 70 US.
yeah, like about £50, something like that, at least here in the UK, which is a lot. And so
Mm-hmm.
I get it, but from my experience talking to developers, it is just the case that Xbox players buy the least games. And I'm an Xbox player as well, by the way. That's not, I feel like I'm a little bit defensive about this because people jump down my throat here when I start to talk about platforms like this. I play on every system, but in my experience from having to talk to publishers and developers, they all say the same thing, which is that we can't sell games on there. And when we put games on there, everyone says, well, when's it going to be on Game Pass? Because that's what people are
Mm-hmm.
interested in. That's how people mostly consume games on in that ecosystem nowadays, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's I think it's a problem for some developers. If you can't get on Game Pass, then it might just not be worth putting your games on the Xbox
Mm-hmm.
anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think we as players are super spoiled. I think, we're talking about 70 US or 50 pounds, right? Like that's a lot. And it's like, you know what? For for a 15 plus 15, 20, 30 hour game, like $70, like it blows my mind playing a full-fledged game, even if you pay full price for it.
Hmm.
Like it's got an entire soundtrack made just for the game, and like the amount of effort that goes into these, I really feel, if you take a step back, I really feel like only paying 70 US for a game, if you pay full price, is still completely spoiled. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to wrap my mind around, but I feel like we're lucky that games are still as cheap as they are.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. I think that in this economy, with the cost of living the way it is, I think the lower it is, the better. Because I think like
Yeah,
a lot of people
definitely.
cannot afford even that, and will be
Hmm.
lucky if they can get one game or a couple of games, every several months or even a year. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that it's that little. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think a couple years ago, before they bumped up the price on Game Pass, I went through and there was some deal. It was like 50% off plus like I had a coupon code or something. I bought like 7 years or something of Game Pass
Oh,
because it was like $20 a year or something, and it was like a crazy deal. So
wow.
I've got Game Pass through like 2028 or something like that. And I think that's about as cheap as it gets. But yeah, I think lowering, I'm not trying to make an argument for raising the price of video games. I don't think that is going to be successful. But I do think like lowering the barrier to entry. If it's $15 a month and it allows people to play more games, I think that's great. It is interesting what it's doing to the industry, or at least like you said, on that platform on Xbox. It is interesting what it's doing. But yeah, I'm curious to see where the industry will go over the next few years. There's a big part of me that's like wants to really defend and hold on to physical games, and
Mm,
I think Nintendo will be the one that lasts the longest. Or we're already seeing like a lot of Xbox games maybe don't even get physical release, or
yep.
very few. But we'll see where the industry goes.
Yeah, I think Game Pass is quite a complicated issue, but I do kind of view it as it is a little bit of a device for chipping away at people's ownership of games. It feels like it's something that, yes, it is making games more accessible, and that's good. That's always good. But at the same time, it's being used to wean people off owning these games, right? And
Hmm.
I do fear that for the Xbox at least, it's going to put players of that console, myself included, in a position where in several years' time or whenever they pull the trigger on this, right, that you just don't really own your games anymore. Really, you just sort of rent them.
Yeah, especially as you as like a video game historian, right? I think it's, gosh, thinking back to all the games that we've lost, or the lost media. I think
Hmm.
I don't know, but I think a lot of people are a lot more aware of that now, and people are dumping the games and making sure that we've got all these digital only games or whatever secured. So that's good at least.
Yeah, they won't be totally lost, but they'll become much less accessible. And the problem will be that they'll release games on Game Pass that will be there one time that won't in the future. And that could even include first party stuff like Hi Fi Rush that has licensed music in it. One day that'll
Hmm.
come down from stuff like Game Pass. And, I
Yeah.
guess eventually that will hopefully get a physical release, what he was hearing about, right? So but there could be situations like this where one day Microsoft might be like, let's take this game down. And if
Hmm.
physical has gone by that point, how do 99.9% of people get a hold of that? They can't. That game is effectively gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think running Deku deals, the website. I think we've seen a lot, like in Europe. It feels like the code in a box games are super popular in Europe, which I
Hmm.
don't seem like they're as popular here in the States. But I don't know if you've noticed it. Like, well, I think game is also like pulling games off their shelves and stuff. But I don't know if you've noticed like a ton of code in a box Switch games or anything like that around you. But
Well, I think the issue is, right, I think a lot of people just don't understand what those are. I've heard a lot of instances where people buy those and don't understand that they don't have a game in them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like parents and grandparents and that type of thing, or people who just aren't really super in touch with games, don't understand that they don't get a cartridge in there. And I think the issue is publishers like Capcom, especially, look at the European market and they're like, well, we're not convinced, we're not confident enough in making it, expending the resources producing physical carts there. So we're just going to fart out these code things. And I don't think it's that, oh, we're all just clamoring for the codes here in Europe. It's not like that. I think, we're just stuck. We just, people here take what they can get. And I think most people who buy those just don't understand what they're getting themselves into. And it's not like you bring it to the till and they're like, hey, do you know this is just a code? If you don't read the warning on the box, they're just going to sell it to you.
yeah,
And I think that's just what happens, unfortunately.
yeah. That's a bummer. But hopefully with this next game, it does kind of feel funny. It feels like a combination of the last two games in that. So the one game you're most looking forward to that isn't available right now, and Liam, your answer was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And I think that, we talked about Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom as a Metroidvania. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, first person. Feels like Metroid Prime 4 is a combination, it's first person Metroidvania game.
Sure.
And at this point, we've seen one trailer for it. But obviously, like you love Metroidvania games. Why is this the one that you're looking forward to the most?
I never thought about it like that it is kind of a bit like those, isn't it? Yeah. But I guess these are just the games I like. Yeah. Well, I think the games I've chosen today are fairly varied, but that is a good point, actually. Well, I've always been a big fan of Metroid Prime. I love those games. And I've been waiting, going on 20 years for this game now. I think Prime 3 Corruption came out in 2007. So, Jesus Christ, it's 18 years, nearly.
And this has had a troubled development cycle, right? I don't know. Do you have any insight into what exactly happened when they had to reboot development of it?
Yeah.
Can you talk about it at all? Or no? Maybe a future video.
Yeah, future video one day. I'll just say that I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about what happened. I've seen a lot of speculation about it. And I would say it's not really straightforward, and it's not like the developers just screwed up.
It never is, what I'll say. Right? Like it is like everyone's an expert online, right? They always know exactly what's going on, but it's never that simple. And I think unless you've worked in a development environment or an enterprise, like a big company, like you don't understand how the wheels turn. Who was it that did Bandai? Was Bandai working? I don't remember who was working on it before Rare or before Retro Studios picked it up.
It was Bandai Namco. It was mostly Bandai Namco Singapore. And I think Bandai Namco Japan was also in on it. And with Nintendo obviously involved as well. Kensuke Tanabe, who's the producer of the Prime series, he was overseeing it. He was, I don't know what you call it, writer, director, producer type role, overseeing it. And it didn't pan out for various reasons. And then I think towards the end of 2018, around then, it got basically cancelled, and the job was given to Retro Studios, who themselves had sort of been through some issues. But they picked that up alongside doing the Prime Remastered version that they released about a year or two ago now. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, and I'd never played any of the Metroid Prime games, and I actually picked up Metroid Prime Remastered when it came to Switch, which is an incredible remaster. I mean, I didn't play the original, but it's like one of the best looking Switch games in my opinion. I think it's right up there with Luigi's Mansion 3 and looks really sharp on Switch.
100%, yeah, and it runs at 60 frames.
Yeah, which is crazy. Which I think is great.
It's a real technical achievement. I mean, the original Metroid Prime already looked really good, but then they just added a bunch of effects and they, improved the textures and everything. It
Yeah,
looks so good. That I think, for me, I think that's the best looking Switch game in terms of like on a technical level.
yeah.
I just think you don't get many photorealistic looking games trying to do that approach.
Especially looking
Most games,
looking that good and running at 60 FPS.
yeah, yeah, you just rarely see that on a Nintendo console nowadays. Most of the best looking games are more stylized, and they're usually from Nintendo. They're going with like more kind of cartoony
Mm-hmm.
visuals. So to see a studio, especially Retro, with their pedigree, pull this off and go with photorealistic visuals as the original Prime went for on the Switch is quite novel, but it looks so good. It is just unbelievable. But I mean, Prime 4 seems to be working with a lot of that technology as its base, and it's going to look even better, I think, by
Yeah.
the time it comes out. I think when you see that final version running on whatever console it ends up coming out on, I mean, I'm sure it will be
It'll
on
be
the Switch
both.
One,
Yeah,
right?
it'll be cross generation for sure. It's got to be.
One hopes, yes. But I think whatever you played on, I think it's going to look really good. And Retro has a good, I think, history with frame rates generally. I think all of the Prime games run at a consistent 60 frames, and I'm hoping that'll be the case with Prime 4.
You think Retro picking up Prime 4 is a good thing? It looks like, at least on Switch, they worked on porting Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze over. They were, of course, responsible for Metroid Prime Remastered. But before that, it was like Mario Kart and Donkey Kong Country Returns, and it's been a while. Do you think Retro, like the modern Retro studios, do you think it's a good pickup for them? It's going to be good for fans.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, the alternative would have been it just got cancelled,
Mm-hmm.
really, I think. Or maybe like Next Level could have done it. They could have had a crack at it. But yeah, I think it's a very good thing, and I think Retro still got it. I mean, they did Tropical Freeze. I mean, a lot of the developers from Prime 3 are still there, but also Tropical Freeze, one of the best games ever made, in my opinion.
Incredible. Yeah, and totally underrated. Like people assume it's just another Donkey Kong game. I think like the progression and the way it teaches you. There's a really good video, and I can't remember who it's by. There's a great video about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, though.
Is this maybe like Game Maker's
I think
Toolkit or
it's
something like
Game
that?
Maker's Toolkit. That's exactly. I was just looking it up. Yeah, Game Maker's
Yeah.
Toolkit makes a great video on it, talking about how underrated it is and how good they are at introducing new things to you, and then introducing a number of things, and it all adds up, and you play through the level. It's just an awesome game.
Yeah, well, they did that. They did Prime Remastered. I think they've still got it, and they've hired a lot of talented people. And I wish I could talk honestly about some of the people they've hired and why I feel good about it, but I can't,
Post release, maybe.
because obviously, well, we'll see. We'll see if they want to identify themselves, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard some interesting stories of people getting hired for having bona fides to do with Metroid.
Yeah.
That really excites me, and I just think they know what they're doing, and I want to see them cook. And the thing I'm a little bit trepidatious about is honestly like the writing, because we know a lot of this hinges around Psylocke, which is this mysterious character that's been in the series since Prime Hunters on the DS. It's just been this weird recurring background character that looks like is going to be the main antagonist in this game, and it's been a long running mystery who this character is, and it looks like finally this is the game that will reveal that. And I'm just concerned like how that will be handled in terms of a storytelling level, because the Prime games go pretty light with storytelling generally. They're quite under, I don't know what the word is. They don't really do a lot of dialogue, and that's quite, I think it's quite understated is what I mean to say, I guess. So if we're getting a dialogue heavy game, that kind of gives me vibes of RAM. But I'm hoping that it fits with the previous three games, and there's a subtlety to it, whatever they're attempting to do, and it doesn't get too melodramatic and weird. I hope if they can handle that, it could be really good. But I think on a gameplay and exploration level, and a visual, technical level, musical, that it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Not worried about that.
Yeah. I think that the last thing I'll say about it is I think that it's really rare for Nintendo to do what they did, and like, when was that? Like 2019, when Shinya Takahashi announced that Metroid Prime 4 was delayed and that the development was going to
Mm-hmm.
like be restarted. I don't like Nintendo doesn't do that. So I think that with that happening, it going to retro, like it feels like if as long as they can keep it tight, like I think it's gonna be a banger for sure.
Yeah, I think that it could end up being one of the best Switch games if they've played their cards right and they've spent their time with it. It's been in development for, like 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
something like that now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a long time, and it looks great so far. So I have every confidence it'll be good.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Do you want to take a guess at when, like, what release date? Do you think it's gonna be a Switch 2 launch title?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I do think this is going to be 2025. I mean, they've said it
2025.
is. I think it's going to stick to that. I think if I had to guess, this will probably be like around the time they generally release a usual Metroid game. I just can't see this being a launch
No.
game. I feel like that's just not something Nintendo generally does anymore. I think that they'll open the Switch 2 with a big first party marquee
Like a 3D
game.
Mario,
So
Super Mario Odyssey 2 or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, something like that with a lot more general appeal. Metroid Prime 4 is much more niche. It will get people excited, but I think that's not really something that's going to move a lot of units
Mm-hmm.
on its
Yeah.
own.
I don't
So
think Metroid
I
has
think you
that
saw.
power, right? It doesn't feel like it has. It's not like Zelda or Mario. It's not like a or Mario Kart or whatever, right? Like, yeah, I agree with you.
I think there's something that makes it a bit more niche because it's the fourth Metroid Prime game,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of relies a bit on having some experience of Prime. So I don't think it's going to do as well. I think it's like Dread did,
Right.
where there was a lot of newcomers. I don't think like this is a game that you play and this is your first Metroid
That's an
game.
interesting point.
So I just don't think like this is a good launch game. I think they'll wait until most Metroid games generally release around September, October time. That makes sense to me. Around autumn, I would say would make sense to me, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I just think they'll go with something with more general appeal for the launch of the Switch, and they'll want Prime to have its own spotlight, right? They won't want if they're doing Mario at launch or something like that, whatever. Then they're going to want to wait to drop Prime 4.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to release both. This is a game they've been work on for bloody
Yeah.
ages, so they're not just going to let Mario steal the spotlight from
Right.
it.
Do you see them dropping Echoes and Corruption, like Prime 2 and Prime 3, before 4 comes out? Because I think you have a really good point. I think, like,
Yeah.
if they would have called it Metroid Prime Beyond, I think that it would be less daunting. But I do think that people see that 4 and they go like, oh shoot, like, can I play it without having played the other games? Yeah, you probably. I think of course you can, but I think you'll miss out on a lot. But do you think? I think it's been rumored for a long time that the entire trilogy will release, and they dropped Remastered. Do you see them dropping a remastered Echoes and Corruption?
Yeah. So as I understood it, way back when they were working on like just a Prime trilogy HD collection, number of years ago, just for the Switch. And then at some point that changed to being Prime Remastered, like remaking kind of like an asset remake of the first one, going back and touching that up much more substantially. And they'd done a lot of work on that Prime trilogy, upresing it and that type of thing. And so as far as I know, a lot of that work still exists. I don't have a lot of insight into where that's at now, but it just would make sense to me that they at least release upresed versions of the Prime 2 and 3, right? Because I know work was done on those for the Switch, and I don't know if they're going to get the full remastered treatment like Prime 1 did because that took much longer. But they should really.
Yeah.
They should, I think, go back and do those. I just think that it's a lot of work. And if you want to get them both out before Prime 4, which I think Nintendo might want to, then it makes sense just to drop some up-res versions. And I think there's been some insiders who know more than I do about the status of things today, who suggested like that's what's going on. It's going to be HD
Yeah.
versions, and I think that's going to be a bit disappointing. But if it has the controls of Prime Remastered, like the Prime Remastered had a lot of customizable control
Yeah.
stuff. If it has that's fine for
Yeah. It
me.
felt a lot like as a newcomer playing remastered on the Switch, it felt a lot less daunting, or it just felt like with those custom controls, you could find something you were more comfortable with. And I think it worked really well. So no secret scoop from Liam in this episode, but
I just don't
yeah,
know. I just don't know. But that's kind of what I think is they will release it before. Yeah, before Prime 4 would make sense to
yeah,
me. But
yeah. And I think the HD upscale instead of like a full remaster, because you got to think like is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Like how if they did remastered, if they use the remastered treatment on Echoes and Corruption, I wonder if it would be worth it, right? So probably just a HD upscale, but I think we'll probably see before Beyond comes out. I imagine.
yeah, I mean, I think you're right with what you're saying there. I mean, Prime Remastered, I don't think it sold like spectacularly well. I think it did like maybe a couple of million at most
Mm-hmm.
in terms of sales.
Which is, and I know, like a couple of million is not. It's like I don't know. It's not that much for Nintendo, but a couple of million is fucking crazy. Like that's for any other company, like selling a couple million units, I think is huge, right? But then you talk about Nintendo that sells 50 million copies of Mario Kart, and like it's not super impressive.
I mean, I just looked it up, and from what I can see, a couple of million was my guesstimate because the last reported figures were March 2023 when it said it. They said it sold 1.09 million copies. So
Mm-hmm.
there's been no updated figure as of recording, so it probably hasn't hit 2 million. So that's probably quite a generous
Yeah.
estimation. So again, that's not much, is it, when you compare it to other things?
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It'll be curious. I'm curious to see how well Metroid Prime 4 will sell then. Like if a Metroid Prime Remastered didn't sell, like 2 million or anything, like I'll be curious. But there's a lot of hype around it, even for people that haven't played the previous games.
Yeah. I hope it does well. I don't expect it to do as well as Dread. I think 2D games are more the 2D Metroids. I think generally tend to sell better than the Prime ones, if I remember
Yeah.
right.
Well, there's one game that I know that at the very bottom of our show notes, I've got this question: any games that didn't make the cut that you want to mention? And I got to say, I've been waiting this entire conversation to talk about this game, and I'm a little ashamed to admit, is it BAKERU? Do you know how to pronounce it?
Yeah. Yeah. You can say BAKERU. That's what the, I guess, voiceover guy says in the trailer for the localized version of it. It's originally called in Japanese Mameda no Bakeru.
BAKERU. Okay.
So that's a little hard to say.
Yeah.
So just say BAKERU. That's fine.
Yeah. And if anyone listening has been following me on Nintendo, I played Mameda no Bakaru before, like it didn't have any English available, but it's the kind of game where you don't like, I don't know. I needed to use Google Translate on my phone for like some shop items. But other than that, like I didn't really pay attention to the story when I played it before it was brought over, but it has been officially localized. And not only was it localized, they also added like a bunch of quality of life stuff, and they improved maybe some of the complaints that I would have had in the original version. And there's also a physical release coming out in like March 2025 or something. So yeah, like I said, I've been looking forward to this entire conversation. I've been looking forward to talking about this one.
That's great. I'm surprised you've played it. Again, this is a bit of a niche one. I don't know that many people who've played it, but you're right. It came out in Japan, I think in 2023. Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
2023. And this is by Goodfeel, who worked on Kirby's Epic Yarn and Princess Peach Showtime most recently.
And WarioWare, did they do WarioWare as well?
No, that's I think Intelligent Systems and Nintendo, and but they did Wario Land Shake Dimension and Shake It, whatever you want to call it, and they did Yoshi's Woolly World. So well seasoned platforming veterans there.
Yeah.
But this is a 3D collectathon platformer game where you play as a Tanuki boy who has to travel Japan and fight different creatures. It's all inspired by Japanese folklore, and each level is based around different regions of Japan. Like you've got Kyoto and Nagano and Okinawa, all the main ones you can think of, and then some. It's actually surprisingly long, I would say, as well. But I guess the main thing you do is you go through levels and you beat enemies with drumsticks, and you collect souvenirs from each region, and each level is made up of unique souvenirs, and you also collect fun facts about local culture in
The fun
Japan
facts
from each
are my
area.
favorite. And it's is it a little golden poop? Is that what it is? Or
It's a little guy that looks like a poop. Like he's wearing like a
yeah.
costume in the shape of a yellow turd,
Yeah. Yeah,
basically.
and like you said, it's like 10 or 15 hours. The combat is a ton of fun. I think that's what sold me on it initially. And
Hmm.
it's like a spiritual successor or inspired by, and maybe it's also have some of the same developers as the original. I don't remember what the game is called, but
Goemon.
Goemon. Yeah. And does it have, I think it still has some of the same like developers or director or something. Do you know?
Not the same director, but I think some of the people who worked on it, yeah, some of the developers worked on this. I think, if I remember right, the guy who directed BAKERU is a first time
Oh,
director,
okay.
but he did work on a lot of the previous Nintendo platformers. Like I think he worked on Wario Land, which we were talking about before,
Hmm.
which I really like. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this game has this really fun sense of humor. I think I don't know if you can read Japanese or if you've seen the fun facts, but there's a lot of fun dialogue,
Hmm.
and the fun facts. There's a lot of them have quite a cheeky, sometimes quite naughty sense of
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah. And
There's a lot of innuendo and stuff like
there's
that.
that, but then there's also, it's funny, like some of the fun facts will just be like, ginger is known to help with your stomach, or like, like it's just like
Yeah, yeah,
genuine,
yeah.
like this is, like and it's all Japanese facts, right? Like it's really cool. I think for any fans that like love Japan or like want to learn about Japan and play a fun game, like it's super underrated. And the BAKERU, which is what it's called in the localized version. It's all in English. Like I said, it's got quality of life updates. This one's published by Spike Chunsoft. I think in Japan, it was originally like self-published by Good Feel. I don't totally remember, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely worth picking up. Full price digital is $40, but it went on sale last month. I'm looking at Deku deals. It went on sale for $27.99, which like less than $30 is a total steal. But I'm gonna triple dip now because I did pick up the physical version from Japan when it was before it was localized and played that, and then of course I got the digital version on Switch. I'm also going to pick up the physical because I love this game so much. I want to support Good Feel. I want to I don't know. I want to own it.
Mm,
Um, and the
awesome.
music is fun too. I also love how varied the levels are. Like it's not just a beat 'em up. There's like one level where you play like Mario Kart. You like turn into a
Yeah, yeah,
dog
yeah.
car or something. Trying to describe this game is an interesting challenge, but it's super fun. The combat is amazing. The different abilities are cool. Like you can shrink down, and it's totally worth picking up.
Yeah, it's basically a 3D platformer collectathon with an emphasis on the collecting, but it also has fun combat, and it has these weird occasional levels that break things up. You've got shoot 'em up stages, you've got racing, all kinds of different things.
Yeah,
And yeah, the environments, as you're saying, very varied. Lots of different. You've got ice levels and beach
and it's
levels
all around
and
Japan,
fire
and
levels.
one level where
Yeah.
you're on like a cruise ship.
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Uh huh.
yeah, it's a great
So,
game.
so there's a lot of different variety, and yeah, I liked it a lot. I think surprised by how quirky and charming it is. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
So that one didn't make the cut. Any other games any other games you want to plug or mention before we wrap things up?
I don't know if there's anything else off the top of my head. I mean, just When Dawn, that's a good game. The Wonderful 101,
Wonderful
that's
101.
a good
And
game.
that came to Switch, right? Like, I feel like that was yeah, it did come to Switch, but that was right at the end of Wii U. I think I backed that one on Kickstarter. Yeah, they dropped the remastered version on Switch.
It was actually just 2013.
Oh,
So
it
like this,
was.
I think it's the second year of the Wii U,
Wow. What is time?
and
I feel like post 2016, like my brain doesn't understand time anymore.
that's okay. And yeah, it came out 2020. It had a bit of a little bit of a Kickstarter campaign, all that, the
Hmm.
remaster. And yeah, the Switch version has some like nice little quality of life improvements in terms of the gameplay and that type of thing. But any version of it is great, in my opinion. But I guess I would mostly recommend like Steam or
Yeah.
PS4 for the frame rate because it's
Yeah.
better.
And I don't want to get too negative, but do you think this is one of the last good games, or maybe one of the last games ever that Platinum releases? What do you think about Platinum and where it's at now?
Well, I think every game they've released, with the exception of like Babylon's Fall over the past several years, has been really
Yeah.
good. Bayonetta Origins is good, very
Yeah.
good.
That's another underrated one.
Yeah, Astral Chain,
Oh,
excellent.
Astral Chain is one of my favorite games ever. It's been like probably in my top 10, and it's definitely like one of my favorite games on Switch. I think not enough people have played it. But I do wonder, like, I don't know, I feel like Platinum Games is in kind of a weird spot. They lost a lot of their talent, it feels
Yeah,
like. So
yeah.
I'll be curious to see if they're able to pull out some more gems.
I mean, I agree with you, but I look at what have they released, and Bayonetta 3, that was good as well. Soul Cresta, that was good. The DLC for the Wonderful 101, good. I mean, I'm looking at the games they've released right now. Even World of Demons on iOS, that was good
Yeah, that
fun. I
was.
like
I was
that.
surprised by how fun that was.
People are saying they're falling apart. You know, that might well be the case, that they've lost a lot of their big directors, their directorial talent, the big names, right? Obviously, Kamiya's gone. Loved him, right?
Yeah.
I'm more interested in what he's going to do than what they will do now, because he was what I think I was most interested there. But I don't know if it's too. It might be a bit premature to say without any real stinker coming out from them
Hmm.
to say, right, Platinum's
Yeah.
done, because they did release a bit of a stink of Babylon's Fall, but that was just like an aberration, I
Yeah.
think. It was more to do with the circumstances in which it was made and it being a live service thing, right? Yeah,
Right.
complicated.
And like we were talking about earlier, like it's not as simple as people feel like it is. Everybody's an armchair general, or
No.
like, everybody behind a screen, they feel like they're an expert, but nothing's that simple, right? I think even when you're working on something that you don't feel passionate about, if you're a developer or creator and you're working at a company and you're like, I don't feel like this is going to be successful, like that's just how the wheels turn, and you're not always, you can't always be responsible for whether something gets released. And I don't know. So I'm definitely looking forward to them cooking up whatever they're cooking up now.
Yeah, I mean, I like you. I think I do have some worries. I think it's valid to be concerned about what's going on there with all those people leaving. I think that's happening for a reason. And I've heard things and not good things, but at the same time, there are still a bunch of talented people
Hmm.
there, and games are made by groups of people and not just
Yeah.
directors. And sometimes you can promote those people internally to directors, and they prove themselves in those situations. And so I just don't want to count them out just
Yeah.
yet. Obviously, it's a concern, but yeah, I think
Let's wait and see.
it's a little premature to do
Yeah.
that.
Just a wait and see situation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Liam, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if there's anything you want to plug right now. I know you have a Patreon and a YouTube channel. If you want to plug, I don't know if you're working on anything you can talk about, or maybe something that you've worked on recently that's dropped. Anything at all you want to plug before we say our goodbyes?
All right. So I guess the last video I worked on was a documentary on the history of Crash Bandicoot 5, which was a cancelled game, the sequel to Crash Bandicoot 4, which came out several years ago. And it was going to be a crossover between Crash and Spyro. And I did like a whole hour long video on this and other cancelled projects that went on at that studio, Toys of Bob. And the history of that studio is interesting. There's sort of unseen projects and weird mid-development shakeups that went on, which led things to go the way that they did. And the video also goes into kind of Microsoft gutting that studio as well once they acquired Activision Blizzard.
Oof.
So if you're interested in some of that behind the scenes stuff and looks at console games, I mean, I've got art, I've got gameplay, I've got everything in that video there. So that's the last big thing I did, but I am always working on new things, and I have yeah, I've got a Patreon where I do podcasts, which is patreon.com/Liam Robertson. And I'm on Bluesky, just Liam Robertson on there, at Liam Robertson .bsky.social, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've
find me
been
there.
I've been loving Blue Sky. Blue Sky's been a
Me too.
breath of fresh air for sure. So I'll make sure to include all those links to everything, Liam, you've been working on and that you've got coming up, and your socials. Again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been great. We talked about a lot of great games: Elite Beat Agents, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, BAKERU, and everything in between. For most of these, except for Elite Beat Agents, you can find price history and more on DekuDeals.com. But again, Liam, thanks so much for joining me. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk a Good Game. This show is produced by me, Andrew Wolf, in Seattle, Washington, with music by Plus Minus One and art by Sonny Ross. Find more good games, create a wish list, and build your video game collection on DekuDeals.com. Deku Deals Patreon supporters experience the site and mobile app ad-free. Join now at patreon.com/DekuDeals. The best way to support TAGG is by leaving a review, and you can suggest a game to be featured on a future episode by sending an email to tagg@DekuDeals.com.